Timestack, the story. The story, though, after passing through several of my short story collections of other titles and being reprinted in various anthologies edited by other people, ultimately turned into a film directed by John Ridley. With the release of that film, it seemed appropriate to assemble yet another story collection called Needle in a Timestack, the third of that ilk, but the first that would actually contain the eponymous short story. I spell all this out so ponderously because I really do like bibliographers who have been tremendously helpful to me over the years as I try to keep track of the close to infinite number of stories and books and articles I've written, and I give them all the help I can. And so, fellows, here is what I suppose can be called the third edition of Needle in a Timestack by Robert Silverberg. Included in it are 3 of the stories that were in the first edition, one that was in both the first and second editions, and one carried over from edition number 2. The story called Needle in a Timestack is finally included in a collection called Needle in a Timestack also. And this, I promise you, is the last time I'm going to bring out a story collection with that title. I mean it. I swear a solemn oath, I am finished, absolutely finished, collecting my work under that title. You do believe me, don't you? Robert Silverberg, January 2019. Needle in a Timestack. Long, long ago, I was at a science fiction convention in Los Angeles and was talking with Bill Rotzler, a very good friend of mine, when a young man intruded on our conversation and began bothering us. Bill turned to him and said, "Go away, kid, or I'll change your future." At which I said, "No, tell him that you'll change his past." And suddenly, I realized that I had handed myself a nice story idea. I even had a ready-made title waiting for it before I wrote Word 1, as I have indicated above. It so happened that in 1966, when my publisher was Ballantine Books, I delivered a short story collection with a title so clunkily unwieldy that it has long disappeared from my memory. Betty Ballantine, the charming and gracious person who was my editor at that company, charmingly and graciously let me know that she thought it was a terrible title, and suggested, in its place, Needle in a Timestack. I loved it. We put it on the book, and as I explained at great and confusing length a few pages back, I used it again a decade later on a second short story collection, with a generally different table of contents. It still struck me as a lovely title, and particularly appropriate for the time travel story I was about to write. So, at last, the short story, Needle in a Timestack, which had not existed when I was assembling the 2 story collections of that name, came into being. I wrote it in January 1982. Its intricate time travel plot unfolded for me with marvelous clarity as I worked, and Alice Turner, the superb fiction editor of Playboy, bought it immediately for Playboy's July 1983 issue. Some years later, a major American movie company bought it also. They gave me quite a lot of money, which was very pleasant, but they didn't do anything about actually making the movie. In the fullness of time, I got the rights back, and eventually my agent sold it to the same movie company, which had undergone a total change of ownership and management, and once again they let the rights lapse. But, in the interim, the story had attracted the attention of John Ridley, the Oscar-winning writer of 12 Years a Slave. Ridley snapped it up, wrote a splendid script totally faithful to my story, found financing, and directed the film, which led finally to the present story collection, in which story title and book title come together at last, half a century after Betty Ballantine set it all in motion.